Welcome back to the movie. Today we also continue the journey with Thor in the Dark World. The beginning of the film tells us about the history of the Dark Elf. They want to bring the entire universe to a dark time. With the power of the ether, they can destroy the entire galaxy. The leader of the Dark Elves, Malekith, almost succeeded. Fortunately, Asgard's army along with Bor, Odin's father, used Bifrost to capture the ether. Stop Malekith. At this time, the Dark Elf lost his weapon, realizing there was no way out, so Malekith sacrificed the remaining soldiers and escaped from the encirclement. After capturing the ether, Bor was indestructible, so he sealed it in a place very deep underground. After escaping, Malekith vowed to return one day. 5,000 years later, after causing a battle in New York, Loki is brought back to Asgard by Thor. When he came before Odin, he sentenced Loki to life in prison for his crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, in Vanaheim, Vanir's hometown, Thor fights with his warriors against the Marauders, a group of cruel invaders that have terrorized the 9 realms for the past 2 years. In Thor's presence, the Asgardians won the battle. After that, Hogun remained in Vanaheim to help the people rebuild it. Thor and his friends return to Asgard together. A party is held to celebrate Thor's victory, but he quickly leaves. He visited Heimdall, asking how Jane was. Odin clearly disapproves of Thor's sentiments, as Jane is merely a mortal who will die long before him. Back on Earth, Jane is in London. After not hearing from Thor for a while, she tried dating a man, but the date was quickly interrupted by Darcy. She announced that the scientific instrument had picked up strange signals. They drove to the highest signal and stopped at an abandoned warehouse. They noticed strange events, such as throwing an object down and it disappearing into space, a car weighing tons in midair. Several portals have opened, linking Earth to other worlds and changing the laws of physics. While Lewis and Boothby continue to play, Jane checks the area and gets lost in one of the portals, taking her to an unknown location. She found herself in a dark abyss. As she approached, a red substance, the ether, entered her body. She then passes out, but luckily, the portals are unstable, so Jane is teleported back to Earth, waking up 5 hours later. She stepped outside and Lewis and Boothby were waiting. They called the police because they couldn't find her for several hours. A policeman touches Jane, but Ether immediately pushes him away. Just then, Thor arrives unexpectedly, as Heimdall states that he cannot use his celestial eye to see her on. While overjoyed to see him again, Jane slaps Thor in the face for not asking about her in 2 years. Even though he was on Earth during the battle at New York. Thor apologized and she quickly forgave him. He then took her to Asgard to investigate the nature of the ether. Upon arriving in Asgard, she was greeted by Heimdall and quickly taken to the healing room. They find the ether in her body but they don't know what it is. A doctor tries to remove the ether from Jane but fails. Odin, angry that a mortal had entered Asgard, orders her to be returned to Earth. But when a guard touched Jane, ether reacted, knocking everyone around. Odin recognizes the ether, telling both Thor and Jane about its origins with the book Yggdrasil. While Odin worked to find a way to get rid of the ether, Frigga talks to Jane. She also secretly visits Loki, and hopes to make her son realize his mistakes. Meanwhile, Malekith sensed someone had touched the ether, awakening from his long slumber. Armed with vengeance, and a desire to turn the universe into darkness, the Dark Elves plan their next attack. At Malekith's orders, Algrim disguised himself as a marauder and deliberately had the Asgardians capture him. Then uses a trick to transform himself into Curse, a demon with the power of a god. He frees all the prisoners except Loki, started a prison riot, distracting the Asgardians so Malekith could lead the fleet into Asgard. A great battle broke out. The goblin warship could not escape Heimdall's eyes. He tried to stop a ship, but the enemy army was very large, successfully breaking through the defenses of Asgard, causing the palace to be breached. Malekith knows that Jane has an ether in her body, so she uses all her strength to capture her. But Frigga, thanks to his magical powers, created an illusion clone of Jane, luring Malekith into a duel. Frigga almost succeeds in defeating Malekith, but Curse intervenes and fatally stabs her. Thor arrived late and was unable to save her. just in time to launch a bolt of lightning that distorts Malekith's face. Before he ran away, father and son were dumbfounded at Frigga's departure. Then her funeral was solemnly held according to Asgardian ritual. Thor knew that Malekith was the only one who could take the ether away from Jane, but Odin was blinded by hatred. He locked Jane up and forbade Thor to act on his own. So Thor devises a plan to save Jane, thanks to Heimdall distracting Odin. Thor freed Loki from his cell, asking him to take him and Jane to secret portals that could be a shortcut to Malekith's location. Sif, Fandral, and Volstagg also join, so that they can successfully escape, hijacking a dark elf's ship. Find their way out of Asgard to a portal that takes them to Svartalheim. Due to the overwhelming power of the ether, Jane is getting weaker and weaker. The three landed in the wasteland. Malekith sensed the power of the ether and immediately faced them all. Now Thor unties Loki and tries to trust his brother again. But he immediately betrayed Thor, cutting off his brother's arm and saying that he brought Jane here to Malekith as a gift. Malekith immediately sucked the ether out of Jane's body. Soon after, Thor's wound was just an illusion to lure Malekith into sucking the ether. Thor called Mjolnir to fly towards him, firing a powerful bolt of lightning that tried to destroy the ether but failed. Curse then fights Thor, while Malekith and his minions leave the planet. Curse was really strong, quickly gaining the upper hand. Loki came to Thor's aid and stabbed Curse in the chest with his sword. But Curse uses that sword to stab Loki back. However, before that, Loki planted a black hole grenade in his body, causing Curse to be destroyed. Loki then apologizes to Thor for his actions, dying in his brother's arms. In a day that Thor lost both his mother and brother, Jane's cell phone suddenly picked up. They go deeper into the cave and find a portal that sends them safely back to London. Meanwhile, a guardian of Asgard is present in the area where Loki died, returning to Asgard to inform Odin. For the past several months, Selvig has been working on developing devices that can teleport people. They meet Thor and Jane, and Selvig says the exact location of the convergence event is Greenwich. They reached Greenwich the next morning, by which time several portals had opened above the city skyline. Malekith soon appeared and engaged Thor. During the war they are dropped into various portals throughout the city, sending them to different worlds. After a while of struggling, Thor dropped the hammer Mjolnir. Malekith took this opportunity to focus on unleashing his power to prepare to destroy the world, but fortunately Thor returned in time. He used the devices Jane gave him and threw them at him. A device that allows him to teleport each part of his body. Then Thor uses all his remaining strength to deal a powerful blow with the Mjolnir, sending him flying into the hull and being teleported back to Svartalheim. Thor fainted. He was also fortunate to be saved by Jane and Dr. Selvig using the control device. The ship crashed and was teleported to Malekith's location, killing the leader of the Dark Elves. The portals teleport and the convergence then closes, and everything ends well. Sometime later, Thor returned to Asgard and was congratulated on his victory by Odin. Odin says that Thor will become a wise king, but Thor responds with humility. Thor leaves Asgard to reunite with Jane on Earth. But when he left, Loki was still alive and was pretending to be his father ruling the kingdom. Sif and Volstagg then gave the ether to Collector Tanalir, who was eager to keep it in his collection. Thor's journey in Part 2 ends here. Stay tuned for the next videos.